I'm just like super disappointed in you. Like, I can't even process these feelings right now. Gosh, it's so hard for me to say this.
Oh boy, here I go killing again.
Yeah, I might be breaking a few hearts. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk. I'm here to talk to you about the Owl House, or more specifically, Amity Blight. I made one video about Amity's parents, and now I'm making one about her. I should do one on her siblings. What I might be giving is a major unpopular opinion. From the start of me reviewing the Owl House, I've gotten tons of requests asking for a video on Amity, but I've held off because at the time, her arc was still in progress. I mean, I could say, Amity's arc is so amazing, and then she goes down the Gina Linetti route. It didn't help there were lots of other channels that made their own videos on her, like The Round Table, Rebecca Rose, Joshua Fagan, Lauren Reedus. However, those videos tend to say what's so great about Amity. Not that Amity's an amazing character, but she still has issues. I tend to stick to the philosophy that you're allowed to enjoy or relate to a character, but there's no such thing as a perfect product. It doesn't always mean they're poorly written, but they can suffer from a huge flaw, whether the writer intended to give it to them or not. Before I begin, I want to say, I actually love Amity's character. Next to Ida, I think she's the most interesting out of the main cast, and I think she's gone through arguably the most growth. However, that does not mean Amity's immaculate. Not in terms of what she does, but rather in terms of how the crew presented her. I was originally going to do a video all about how the Owl House is semi-rushed, and while writing it, a good number of my complaints went back to Amity. So what's so bad about her? Well, first, we need to start from the beginning. Amity begins the show as your typical anime mean girl. She comes from a wealthy family, she gets good grades, but she's as arrogant as the day is long.
Aww, it's like mine, but much smaller and meaningless.
All she's missing is that freaking laugh. She surrounds herself with a gaggle of other powerful witches, who she deems worthy of associating with a blight. One of her biggest goals is to join the Emperor's Coven, since they only accept the cream of the crop.
Only the best can ascend these ranks. Someday that could be one of you.
Mean girls are very hit or miss for me, and they all too often have the tendency to end up as hate sings. Regina George is one of my all-time favorite characters. If she existed, I would definitely hate her, or either Gretchen. But in terms of movie, musical, whatever, her cattiness is why she's so remembered. From somebody like Pacifica Northwest or Cleo from Monster High, it was great to see them progress as characters. Then you get Connie D'Amico, or Andrea from Molly McGee, where no matter how many times they seem to learn their lesson, they go right back to square one. I'm willing to bet that for the first few episodes, you likely hated Amity, or dismissed her as another Connie, who was created to be hated. She patronized Willow.
Oh, Willow. You don't have anything to show, do you? This is why people call you half a witch, Willow.
And by the end of things, Amity got humiliated.
Amity Blight!
Huh?
I suspected a twinge of jealousy, but this is just sad.
In rewatches, it's great to see that despite this, there are occasional hints she cares, she just can't properly express it. Especially since whenever the rest of her friends pick on Willow, she might be mean about it, but she always gets them to stop.
Leave her alone. It's not her fault she was born without talent.
Not to mention when the teacher said,
If the next abomination is a failure, everyone gets extra homework for a month.
it's actually Amity who volunteers.
Excuse me, sir, but I am ready to present my abomination. Rise!
At the time, you probably think she just wants to show off, but knowing she's the most powerful in her class, she was trying to help them.
I've always saved the best for last, Amity. You'll have to wait your turn.
And look, I just want to put it out there, but while Amity wasn't a saint herself, she had a point Willow was cheating in a totally obvious way.
Last time I saw you, your abomination was mush. What did you do? I saw that! Abominations don't eat!
It's super frustrating when you put in all the work and then somebody sits on their butt and gets a much better grade. Slowly but surely, events cause the girls to have to interact with one another. There's the theme where, usually, they'll start off rocky.
Ugh, you. Amity! Whoop. Reading to kids! Wow!
Then have a heart-to-heart.
Thank you. Maybe you aren't a bully. I haven't exactly been the friendliest witch either.
Because Luz is an incredibly accepting person, she and Amity become close friends and help the other become better. Thanks to Amity, Luz gets the acceptance she craves, and thanks to Luz, Amity can finally be herself around other people. What an amazing arc, right? Well, there is one big issue. See, Amity has a stellar arc, but all too often she'll hog the spotlight from other characters, and when they should be giving her more development, they don't. Don't get me wrong, Amity is interesting, but it feels like the other characters get neglected in favor of her. I first noticed this with her crush on Luz. In Enchanting Grom Fight, Amity's chosen as Grom Queen, and she builds up how she has an embarrassing fear.
The worst thing is that Grom can read minds and shapeshift into your worst fear. And mine is very embarrassing.
When confronted by Grom, we learn her fear isn't something stupid like ducks, but rejection, specifically Luz rejecting her. However, because Luz is as dense as a bag of beans, she doesn't get it.
You were afraid of getting rejected. So, who did you want to ask out? Oh, it's not important.
This is the dawn of Lumity, but admittedly, Amity never has that moment where she realizes she's in love with Luz. At no point before this episode did it ever feel like she had a crush, and without hindsight, it feels like she just likes Luz because. I mean, now I can tell you it's because Luz was the first person to treat her like a person.
Honestly, I'm kind of amazed with how fearless you are. You've done things I could never do.
But I couldn't tell you that at the time. It wouldn't be such a big problem, but for a while after, it felt like her crush on Luz was her only character trait.
Stay away from my Luke!
Me? On a team with you? Running around in cute uniforms? Sweating? I gotta go!
I know Dana said she tried to tie Lumity into the plot, but at times it feels like she went back on her word. Like you're making chicken soup and the recipe calls for a pinch of salt, but instead you drop the whole shaker in that bad boy. And while we're on the subject of arcs, her stepping down as Queen Bee had issues. To reiterate, Amity had a group of girls who carried out her bidding, but most of them received little focus. Only Skara and Basha are named in the show itself, and both suffer from show don't tell, Skara most of all. In understanding Willow, we learn part of the reason why Amity hangs out with them is because of her parents.
Nonsense. Blights only associate with the strongest of witchlings. You may choose a new friend from one of the suitable companions we invited.
Well, Amity claims,
But they're mean!
sure, Basha's
Mean!
but we never see that from Skara. Amity tells Willow,
I won't let Basha and her gang pick on you ever again.
this doesn't have the impact the writers expected. In every single appearance up to this point, Skara hasn't been particularly evil or
Mean!
at worst she's like Sue from Carrie, where she's complicit but seems to have the potential to be better.
Time to bug out at my birthday party. Invite only, but you witches are my VIPs.
Oh no, you're throwing your own private birthday, and it's invite only. I'm sure Maleficent asked you for pointers. One complaint I got about my Skara video is Skara's just a background character, but she was still used to help Willow and Amity, so I expect her to have a little more impact than a nameless character. A few people agreed with me. One person said the party idea should have went to Basha. She actually bullied Luz's friends, both during, before, and after, and she's the most antagonistic of the Hexite students. And speaking of students, let's talk about Gus and Willow. You know, our entry point into Hexide, and Luz's first friends likely ever. Oh boy, I've gotten lots of comments about these two. In season 1, they were great. I can't complain too much. In season 2, all too often, it feels like they're prop pieces. We don't even know the name of Gus's palisman. In episodes where it feels like they'll get some shine, Amity ends up taking over.
I get it, Boots. Just grab a coat. Willow, Goops, watch over Luz.
Convention begins with the two inviting Luz to the event, and they disappear less than halfway through, so the episode can be all about Amity and Luz having a witch's duel. And the super interesting plot point of Lilith mentoring Amity, that never comes up again. Even when Lilith is staying at the Owl House, the two never interact. I know I brought this up in a couple of their videos, but Lilith represents the institution Amity's expected to join. Amity betraying her teacher would be on the level of Peridot calling Yellow Diamond a clod. Understanding Willow starts off about Willow and Amity's friendship. Fair enough, but instead of telling us why Willow was in the Abomination track, or how she met Gus, it tells us about Amity.
Then you let your new friends pick on her for years, all because you thought she was weak.
How would you like it if in Gravity Falls, the episode starts off about them looking at Stan's memories, and then the entire plot gets switched to Zeus, meaning that whole revelation that Stan cares for Dipper, but likely because of his abusive past, has a warped idea about love, that would never happen. On the Gus side of things, there's Through the Looking Glass runes. It starts as a Gus-centered episode, only to end up being all about Amity. Do you remember how in South Park they had that whole arc where Randy became a pot farmer? And for a while, it felt like the creators forgot the show was first and foremost about the four boys. At best, they would get subplots. That's how it feels with Gus and Willow. You know which show did this dynamic right? Gravity Falls. With them, Brandon and Candy didn't receive their own episode, but that's because they didn't need it. They played big roles in the episodes already, and they were strong enough on their own. They weren't interchangeable, and you could feel their presence. Beforehand, I talked about how this video evolved from a prior draft. Originally, I wanted to do a video all about the Owl House's rush problem. Since season 2 started, it felt like they went on Weight Watchers when it came to the plot. Probably because they don't have as much time as they'd like. They don't know how to balance the side characters with the overall narrative, especially now that they're only getting 3 specials. To a small degree, I get their fears. If a show starts off good and ends badly, like started, it can plunge it into infamous obscurity. Therefore, they have to tell a story while trimming out other juicy bits. It reminds me of SU's 5th season, where we get this grand reveal Rose Quartz never existed, and Pink Diamond was playing both sides, that the crystal gems and the homeworld gems were lied to for 5,000 years, and their sacrifices were for nothing. But because of time's sake, everybody but Sapphire is like, oh, okay, Amity's a part of the story. But because she's, I hate to say it, more interesting than Luce or her other friends, she ends up overshadowing them. I already discussed the episodes where Amity hogs the spotlight. Now let's discuss times where Amity herself needed work. In Wing It Like Witches, Amity helped Luce and Willow at Gretchby, but ends up with a broken leg. Then we get the next episode.
It's a shame Amity could make it. She would love this trip. Shut up.
And who does it focus on?
Lilith!
Her and Luce even fight not once, but twice. Hey, at least Gus and Willow did something. Amity just got to sit in her room. Maybe the staff wanted to focus on Luce and Ida, but it was a bad choice to sideline her. In escaping expulsion, Luce and her friends get expelled by the Blights, in order to spite their daughter. Considering everything I just said, this might be a weird statement, but Gus and Willow have no reason to be there. They do try to convince Bump to re-enroll them, but they get grounded halfway through.
In light of recent events, Augustus Porter will be grounded for no less than a year.
Just one? Willow's grounded for 3 at least.
No! Hey, man!
I'm surprised he didn't tell their parents why they got expelled. Like, sorry, it wasn't my doing. I was ordered to. At best, they act like emotional plot devices. That way, Luce has a reason to go to Odalia. And at the climax, despite saying they'll help Luce, they do nothing but watch, mouth agape. Sorry if it sounds like complaining, but
Luce, Willow, and Gus are my friends. They're nice to each other. They listen to each other. They make me think about the kind of person I really want to be.
doesn't really work considering how little they did this episode. Season 2 finally has Amity act on her feelings. But because she doesn't think Luce reciprocates, she walks away in embarrassment.
Okay, good to see you. Farewell forever. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that?
The next day, she doesn't even show up to get her palisman, the implication being that she was that mortified. This episode is unique because Luce realizes her long-term goals are so vague, she has no conviction, and ends up the only student not getting her witch's staff. Maybe her and Amity could bond over.
Aw, Ghost, did you help too? Who's a good palisman?
When was this?
Great, now all we need is...
Rain.
Let me explain why this was another bad move. In order to get a palisman, you have to state your deepest wish, or a long-term goal. Even if it's something stupid like you just want to graduate, that counts. For the last few episodes, Amity went through a ton of character development. Wouldn't getting her palisman to be the best way to steal it on screen? I had one theory why we never saw Ghost until now, is because of who the Blights are. They have access to Palistrom Wood. But why would Odalia and Alador let Amity carve her own palisman, considering how she's been acting the last few episodes? Have this happen during knocking on Hootie's door. This is the episode where Lumity becomes canon. They never say the Bat Queen and the rest of the palismen went home, and she does owe Ida another favor. Anyhow, I know I've been pretty hostile to Amity. Once again, don't take this as me saying she's poorly written. She's one of my favorite characters, but at the worst of times, she tends to get way too much attention. So sad, but I sincerely wish the writers find their balance.